Vedant Sultania to give a brief introduction about Mr. Sandeep Kumar, the speaker for this evening.
So thank you, Udhav, and good evening, sir. Mr. Sandeep
Good
Kumar is the
evening.
current managing director of Tata Metaliks Limited. He is a mining engineer from IIT Dhanbad and a postgraduate in international trade from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, New Delhi. His core experience revolves around commercial and general management responsibilities in the steel of business and steel raw materials. He is an elected member of the CII Eastern Regional Council. He is also managing committee member of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the executive committee member of the Indian Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Sandeep Kumar has over 27 years of work experience with the Tata Group. He has also been the managing director of S&T Mining Private Limited from 2008 to 2012. He has also been the executive director of Tata Metaliks for over 3 months in 2017. He is also the executive in charge for Tata Steel Limited. So, it's an honor and privilege to have a legend like you as a speaker. It's an encouragement for all of us that you have kindly consented to be present here today for a conclave and enlighten us with your knowledge. Thank you, and Udhav, over to you.
Thank you, Vedant. So, I would now request you to kindly share your thoughts on the topic future of work.
Yeah, thanks Vedant and thanks Uddhav. So first of all, the generous words of introduction do not really fit me, but nevertheless, we will, make an attempt to have a conversation around the subject, which is a bit complex in some sense, the future of work. It's broad, but at the same time, I would attempt to give you a sense of what today's organizations are doing and where the future is headed. So, good evening, guys and girls. I think I'm happy to be here because I like interacting with youngsters. And that's the reason when I think Uddhav approached me, right, Uddhav? I think so. I said, okay, let's go for it. But I was expecting more of a conversation and less of a lecture because I'm sure you guys have got bored of the number of classes that you've attended over the last several months, particularly on virtual mode. So that was a novelty for some time, but that's no longer a novelty. Nevertheless, let me begin by giving you a sense of what I intend to speak. So the future of work is mainly going to revolve around the future of organizations and what challenges the organizations are facing today and what they think how the future is going to evolve and therefore what is required to be done. The purpose behind talking about the organization is that I would presume almost all of you would either join organizations or would build organizations. I would rather wish that you build organizations than join organizations on a permanent basis. So you maybe kind of join and get some experience and then create your own startups, create your own organizations, become entrepreneurs. I think that's what is expected from bright youngsters, which I expect all of you to be. The mere fact that you have taken this initiative does mean that you are different from most of your other peers. Okay, so you're willing to listen, you're willing to, let's say, get a point of view, which is extremely important from a point of view of learning, which is an integral part of my talk. Learning is an extremely important part as we go ahead. So if we look at today's world, we are living in a world of accelerating changes, where the future is less and less an extrapolation of the past, isn't it? The past has moved in very many different ways. Nobody knew that COVID would strike suddenly, and the black swan event that we have studied. I don't know whether you've heard of black swan, but the black swan is something which you don't normally see. You see a white swan. So black swan event is something which you never see and you never foresee. So COVID was one such black swan event. Even though you must have seen that movie, what's it called? The Pandemic, right?
Yes,
Have you guys seen that? Yeah.
Yes,
Correct. And even though a pandemic hit the world maybe 100 years back, the Spanish flu in 1918, but I think there are forces at work today which are changing the world in very many different ways. And the COVID pandemic has further accelerated that change. And therefore, it is increasingly difficult to predict what's going to happen in the future. So, this sudden acceleration, which we find over the last, let's say, few years or a decade, is in no small measure being driven by growth of massive computational power over the last couple of decades in particular. And I think if we look at the year 2007, that was a landmark year in some sense. The first iPhone was launched, not because the iPhone is as a brand, but I think the whole set of features were very, very different. I remember attending a program uh, of University of Pennsylvania, Ross Business School. There were 5 or 6 professors, and at Tata Management Training Center in Pune, it's a 2 weeks program. And uh, Steve Jobs making that presentation and introducing the iPhone. It was just an amazing product at that point of time, and nobody expected that. So that somebody can, use that phone to with the touch features, and you could make not only make phone calls, but you could do a variety of things. So the changes after 2007 have been very dramatic, although some would argue that even before that. Some say that 2007 was also the era of cognitive, let's say, technologies. Cognitive is thinking. Before that, or cognitive computing, you can say. So artificial intelligence is somewhat linked to cognitive computing. Cognitive is nothing but thinking. When artificial intelligence starts to think, which it doesn't today, okay, it's more of a when they say artificial intelligence, it's more of a, I would say, it's more of a buzzword. The cognitive part is still to be developed. It's still in a very, very nascent stage. What it does is more of statistical, let's say, analysis. So it's more of data analytics, which and at a very high end is called artificial intelligence. But it has moved mountains. It can do facial recognition. Let's say your Siri or any of your voice to text, text to voice translations today is happening because of such advances in digital technology. So I think the digital technology part is one area which all of you need to perhaps study more from a perspective of understanding what changes have happened and therefore what can happen in the future, even though, but this does give you a sense. If you look at the latest smartphones, they pack in over 6,000 more transistors than the chip that powered the PCs in the late 1980s. The personal computers of the 1980s, compared to that, today, your smartphone has far more, 6,000 times more transistors. So you can imagine the computing power. If I look at the year of 2017, the global internet traffic crossed 46,000 gigabytes per second. That's a 40 million fold increase compared to 1992. Okay, 40 million times compared to 1992. And the shock waves of this explosion in computing and communication are reverberating all around us. And we can see whether it's e-commerce, the sharing economy, the Uber and the the hotel chain that we have where you share the B&B. You have synthetic biology, blockchains, augmented reality, mixed reality, machine learning, 3D printing, IoT, you just name it. You have so many new technologies which have just come up suddenly, and more are coming up. Within the next few years, we expect more than anywhere between 200 billion and 1 trillion things, mostly sensors, to get connected to the net. So it's a world of hyper connectivity, 200 billion to 1 trillion. So in such a fast changing world, having resources is no substitute for resourcefulness, and that even the smartest companies are vulnerable. Don't you think so?
Yeah, sir.
Despite the commanding lead in search, Google missed the opportunity to take the lead in social media. So who came up? It was Facebook, isn't it? And Facebook built an unsurmountable lead. iTunes, Apple was the poster boy, still is. But when it was slow to offer streaming content, who came in?
So YouTube, Ghana,
Okay, so
Spotify, and the other
absolutely,
platforms.
Spotify, Netflix, So I think they entered and they have become leaders. So an organization as massive as Apple, okay, and Google, they were surprised by the newcomers. So the point is, you guys can surprise the established organizations. So, you need to be ambitious. Okay, so so then the question is, why is it that organizations, such marquee organizations as Google, Apple, Microsoft, why they are beaten by, let's say, the guy in the garage, as they call it? Or I'm sure some of you, if you have the right ambition, I'm sure you will beat some of these companies and come out with stuff which nobody has done before. That's because organizational inertia is all pervasive. It's endemic. The moment organizations become large, they become bureaucratic. Mostly. Okay? If you look at some of the statistics, only 11% of organizations, Fortune 500 companies, only 10 to 11% of Fortune 500 companies of 1955 are still on the list today. Most of them have withered away to be replaced by newer, nimble ones. Okay. If you look at Tesla, what has it done? It has shamed the automakers like Ford and Toyota and General Motors who have been there for decades, right? And now every major automaker is trying to make up and coming up with an electric vehicle, a full range. Tesla is already in. The valuation of Tesla is perhaps today more than the combined top three automakers, or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but that's the kind of. And where did Tesla come from? It had no experience in automotive. And if you talk to industry experts, they will say you need to have detailed understanding, experience, knowledge of automotive business to be able to succeed. But Tesla came in. So that should give you confidence that no business is untouchable. Okay. If you look at the average age of S&P 500 company, it has fallen from, let's say, 60 years in the 1950s to about 20 years today. S&P, Standard and Poor Index, just like we
Yeah,
have.
sir. S&P 500.
Yeah, correct. So as organizations become bigger, they are plagued by inertia. Okay. So what we need is an organization or organizations that have a capacity to change themselves as fast as the change itself. An organization that continually redefines customer expectations. Now, these guys could not understand the customers. They did not understand what the latent need is. The latent part is important because when you come out with new products and new services, people don't understand that the customers what they need. You have to anticipate, right? So, like for example, if you look at Airbnb, the market cap of Airbnb today is higher than I think the top three or top five hotel chains in the world. Some such number. Now, again, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'm an order of magnitude. This is huge. And Airbnb came in from where? From nowhere. So, because they were able to understand the expectations of customers, suppliers, somebody has a spare room, is willing to offload it. So, uh, organizations need to understand the changing expectations of customers. They must be able to create the future themselves. And how does one do that? By attracting the most enterprising and creative employees. Like if I am an employer, I would look at the brightest talent around me, okay, to join us. Why? Because we need to continually energize ourselves, we need to continually redefine ourselves, and to make sure we are ahead of the curve. And we need to continually innovate. Innovation is the fuel for renewal. If I look at some of the other things, going ahead on digital, I think digital technology has democratized the tools of creativity. Every day, more than 700,000 hours of new content gets uploaded on YouTube. 700,000 hours every day. 3 million blogs get created with WordPress, and 100 million new photos are posted on Instagram. This is every single day. Thousands of new apps are put on the Google Play Store. So I think everybody has an access. It's like the story of Amazon and Flipkart, where individual entrepreneurs could put their stuff and make it available to people all around. So most large organizations are slow, they are too siloed, and too bogged down with complex and traditional organizational structures. And that is what makes their functioning cumbersome and bureaucratic. The best companies that were organized were for a world that is fast disappearing. So you have large companies like Pepsi and Coke and IBM and lots of the other companies. They were all organized for a world that is fast disappearing. So in the brick and mortar world, like in the steel industry and the cement industry and some of it, you still have changes which happen relatively slowly. But in various other industries, including service and technology, things are changing very, very fast. So at that time, these organization structures were made to ensure uniformity, standardization, and predictability. But today they don't hold good, because that slows down the speed of decision making and breeds mediocrity. Okay, so if in an organization you have an idea, you need to go through let's say layers of management. And why I tell you that is because you guys, when you join organizations, you must join with your eyes open. Don't join an organization merely because it offers you a good salary or has a good name. You must need to understand what the organizational culture is, how bureaucratic it is, what are the opportunities that you have for innovation, for your creativity to flourish. Right. So if we look at, let's say, so that was, I was talking about how the world has been over the last, say, decade or more. Now, if you look at the fact that COVID struck and what happened after that, there is, of course, an unimaginable connectivity which you find across the world, not only amongst humans, but things as well. IoT. Today, you can switch on your refrigerator using your mobile phone. You can use your Philips Hue lamps, the sensors connected to that through your mobile. I switch on and off my air purifier using the mobile. So so today things are all connected. This kind of connectivity was never there. There is an unprecedented automation and digitalization. Advances in sensing, digitization, computation, storage, networking, and software is making all industries computable. So there are industries like, for example, if I look at my industry, my company where I work, people would tell me a few years back, well, our industry operates like this. Digital is not going to impact us. Today, in our company, we have 3 robots. Another 2 are being put in another couple of months' time. We will have 5. By next year, we'll have, let's say, about 15. And by next year, we'll have 50. That's the plan. And in an industry where, in our industry, nobody has our robots. Now, robots is something which is pretty common in automotive, but not so in our industry. But we had to make that change. Today, we can predict the failure of our equipment through machine learning algorithm, and we have been doing it. So we have, in collaboration with IIT Kharagpur, created that software and the sensors and the data, and are today able to done in a limited way in let's say a couple of equipments today. But most of our critical equipments we will be covering through this. So if you can predict failures, what you can do is you can take the machine down earlier, you can replace the critical parts and ensure that your whole line, the production line, doesn't go down. You save enormously on cost, predictability. Now, I'm not talking about things which is being done by Google or Facebook or Tesla. I'm talking about things which are being done here in India. And this is a reality, and this has all happened over the last couple of years. It's not something which has been like happening for years or something. And it's been done by youngsters like you guys. Maybe they're a little elder than you. So we have what is called digital champions who are associated with every department, every function, and they kind of create that environment wherein we take up challenges, projects, and use the latest digital technologies. Of course, we are on a, I would say, learning curve. We are still in an early stage, but there are things which we could not imagine 2 years back, 3 years back. We're already doing. You heard of remote support through augmented reality?
Yeah,
So
sir.
we can, we are now started using the first augmented reality using augmented reality to provide remote technical support. Now, as you would know, the plant, steel plant or a plant like ours operates 24/7. So in the night shift, which is typically between 10 and 6 in the morning, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., when you guys are maybe still watching Netflix or something, these guys are operating in the plant. And if there is a failure which happens, typically the seniors are not there because they come in the general shift. So whom they would go for support? They would try and fiddle and do things what they understand. But if we can provide that remote, so if there is a failure or breakdown, they will call the senior up, who will take his own time to come in because he doesn't stay in the plant. Maybe sometimes he's sleeping, he hasn't heard the phone. But when you are able to provide technical support sitting from your home, we can imagine the impact. You can connect to the supplier, the original equipment manufacturer. He can provide support, right? So there are things which are happening, which are just amazing, which we not only read of, but we are actually implementing them. So you heard of IBM's Watson?
Yes.
IBM's Watson?
Yes, sir.
So what did it do? Why was it famous? Why did it become famous or popular? Does anybody know what happened to IBM's Watson? Anyone? Okay, no problem. So IBM's Watson won the game of Jeopardy, okay, which was unimaginable that a computer could beat, a human, the champion at that point of time. I think it was 2011 or 12 or something like that. Okay, it shook the world. And what did Watson have? They say artificial intelligence. There is nothing called artificial intelligence in the true sense. All it does is statistical programming. It uses statistics, data patterns, and tries to, win over you. So game of chess, again. So, today a computer can beat you, anybody, the world champion. So therefore, the importance of data today is unimaginable. And I was reading the other day that artificial intelligence, I mean, they keep using the word artificial intelligence. Well, today can act as a creative artist, so it can pick up the works of the great artists of the world from the past. So I'm not a creative person. Just tell me an artist's name, anyone who's on the field of arts? Who are the top two artists you know of?
MF Hussain,
Okay. And worldwide, outside Europe, European?
Leonardo
Leonardo.
da Vinci.
Okay. So you look at the work of any of these artists, the patterns. Today, using artificial intelligence, these guys can create a work of art which is equally good, if not better. Now, somebody told me that artificial intelligence is about data, then how can it do creative work? Again, using the same statistical data analytics. So you will be amazed. I was also amazed when I read it first time. So it figures out how data is used. So when I was saying a little while back that we have moved from a programmable computing era to cognitive computing era, that is what I mean. Almost all industries, all fields are becoming computable. That means you can put them under 0 and 1, bits and bytes. It's a matter of detail and it's a matter of extent. So the gap between science and science fiction is getting narrow. Okay. The other change that we see is the changing societal expectations and norms. What do you think? What's changing in society? What are the issues that you guys hear of? What's the biggest social issue, or let's say in your mind? Anybody?
So the plight of the Indian farmers in
Okay.
today's political scenario,
Okay. So
And
and
that's
also
a
mental health.
local issue. That's a country issue. Worldwide, if you look at it, what's one of the biggest challenges for today's society, today's human civilization?
So there's practically like no solution for mental health. Like many people don't really realize that mental health is actually a thing.
Okay, right. So those, there are advances happening there as well. Okay, like IBM's Watson has been ingested with, hundreds and thousands of, let's say, medical journals on how to treat cancer. Okay, and today, while it is not greatly successful, it is only partially, but tomorrow it will be. But one of the biggest challenges this planet Earth faces today is the threat of climate change, isn't it? So I don't know to what extent you guys are, let's say, attuned to this, but you look at the environment around us and look at the impact we as a society are creating on this earth, right? So unless we have become more responsible, we are not going to leave this planet Earth in the same form as we got it for the future generation. Okay, so you see suddenly you will have huge rains, storms, and you have let's say droughts. You know of tropical storms. You see what's happening in even if you look at it in Calcutta, the
Yes.
two storms we had, US, and Calcutta is still better because you have Sundarbans in between, so they protect you. But if it happens in the west coast of India, Bombay, God forbid, so tsunami. I mean, this is all a result of the climate change that is creating havoc and will create havoc. It's still not created havoc. So the society expects today's youngsters in particular to be more responsible, to be more responsive to their needs, be it climate change, be it poverty. You are privileged by sheer stroke of luck. You have been born in a family that can afford your education. You are privileged. How much of you guys really realize that? How much you think about it? So what do you do to give back? You need to think about these things, that you are lucky. You and I are lucky. So how does one navigate the future? So I just mentioned a few issues, and uh, so how does one navigate the future of work? So if as an organization you build an organization tomorrow, how should you go about it? I mean, it's a complex subject. You have to do a lot of things. You have to get resources, capital, have a viable business line, get employees, a lot of things. But I would look at three soft things. I'm going to talk about three soft things very briefly. It might get a little heavy, but I'll just quickly move. You must define the purpose of your organization. What's the purpose? Why you exist? Why are you forming this organization? Is it only to make money, or is there something more to it? So you think about it, because if you define a purpose and correctly identify, if your employees identify with that, then it's going to be much more sustainable. Okay, you must uh, must be able to communicate and articulate that to your employees, to your peers, and I'm presuming that you're going to build organizations. Okay, so that's one. Define your purpose. Second is, you must identify your priorities. What are your priorities? Where do you want to focus on? You can't do everything. Well, you will do, but where will you, let's say, prioritize and focus? Okay, so let's say if I look at Tata Metaliks, we have 6 strategic priorities. We call it the 6 business pillars. So we say we kind of we focused on cost leadership. Cost leadership, number 1. Number 2 is a supplier of choice. So we will supply to our customers and we'll become their a supplier of choice. We will be a responsible corporate citizen. A responsible corporate citizen. What does it mean? I will be giving back to society, to the community, and to the environment, to nature. And I will have the strongest governance possible. I will have robust people practices, which is my employees, my people around me. That's the 4th pillar. Okay, then I have value added growth. So when I grow, I must grow in a segment where there is a value add. And the 6th one, we call it as the innovate and excel. So innovation and excellence. It's not important for you to kind of note all these points, but it's more the sense that you must define your strategic priorities. That where do you want to operate? Where do you want to focus? And finally, the 3rd thing is focus on building a strong culture. Your organization must have a strong culture. Again, it's a little too early for you, I know. So it becomes a little heavy. You're still in 11th and 12th. But it's important to keep this in your mind that when you join an organization tomorrow, what kind of a culture you're joining? Does it have an open culture and a transparent culture? Does it encourage creativity? Does it encourage people to talk openly? Or does it say, no, you are too young, you don't know. I have been in this organization for 20 years. I know what's right. Okay. So I hope you understand culture. Do people understand culture? How do you define culture? Or how do you explain culture? Anyone?
So the way of doing stuff.
Yes, very good.
The ethics.
Very simple way of explaining that. The way of doing things. How does an organization behave? What are the demonstrated behavior patterns in an organization? Okay. So, if I were to look at it, so different elements of culture, different organizations might have. If it was my organization, and Tata Metaliks is my in some sense because I head it, but we have different elements of culture. But if we were to, let's say, prioritize and say top 3, I would say the first is simplicity and agility. Whatever you do must be simple for people to understand. If you write a big Potha PhD, people will not understand. Only you will understand and a few of you will understand. So keep it simple. You heard the KISS principle, KISS? Keep it simple, stupid.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So keep it simple. Don't make it too complicated. The power of 3. So when I'm telling you, I don't know whether you noticed, everywhere I'm telling you 3 points, not more than 3. Why? Because more than that, the human brain cannot retain for long. I, of course, have difficulty with even 3, but that's a different matter. But you can't retain more than 3 for long, for most people. Some of you may be exceptions. So, if I look at, as I was saying, culture, so simplicity, as I said, the KISS principle, the power of 3. Culture, I talked about in terms of openness, open culture, diverse culture. Do you have enough gender diversity, race diversity from different states, differently abled people? Do you know that if you have differently abled people, they actually turn out to be very good in some aspects? They may not appear to be. I remember I was staying in, I think it was in Taj Krishna or Hyderabad. And there this guy came in, this bearer, when I was having tea in the lounge. This guy came in with, and he had a badge here saying, I cannot speak. But he came to take the order. So he gave me the. So there are organizations which hire such people because they add to the richness and diversity of the organization. And often such organizations are far better, far more powerful. Okay. So that's very important. Then, of course, learning and innovation, as I was saying, learning. How does one develop a mindset of curiosity and openness to experimentation and failure? You heard of Google's 20% time policy? Google has a policy that any employee can spend 20% of the time for their personal projects. And I understand that Gmail and Google Maps came out of that. So the fellow must be doing something on his own, and he came up with this. But when he was directed by the organization to do a project, that was not as successful as when he was left alone. So what it means is you give autonomy, empower people, and they do far better. So I know that we'll close quickly. Automation and digitization are changing the landscape rapidly, and COVID is pushing organizations on this journey. You know what the future of the factory looks like? So I like this statement. The future of the factory will have only two employees, a human and a dog. The future of the factory will have only two employees, a human and a dog. Why the human? Because human has to feed the dog, otherwise the dog will die. Why the dog? Dog has to make sure the human doesn't touch the machinery. It's fully automated. So there would be nobody else, just the two of them. Okay. So how should you guys prepare for the future? Three things again. Be ambitious. Don't just join an organization and say, my job is done. Okay, you can join, but think more, think better. Have concern for nature and society. Okay. So I mentioned to you about sustainability, planet Earth, climate change. Think about the privileges that you have. Okay. And finally, be a lifelong student. Hunger for learning. And in particular, learn about digital technology. That's changing the world like nobody's business. And that will go on to change dramatically over the next 20 years. Thank you, boys and girls. There are no ladies and gentlemen here.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your wonderful thoughts. Our audience and our team had some questions for you.
Yeah.
Now, I request my colleagues Rishabh and Vedant to please take over.
Yes, thank you, Uddhav. So, sir, we'll be beginning with a few questions that we had received during the time of registration for this conclave. So the first question has been asked by Siddharth Jain. He asks, Sir, could you please describe any memorable moment with Sir Ratan Tata and anything that you could learn from that occasion?
Okay, yeah. So coincidentally, I've had some exposure with him, and few minutes here and there, and otherwise, I don't think he would know me. Of course, all of us know him. I used to work in Mumbai. This was 2007-8, and Tata Steel was completing its 100 years, and we wanted Mr. Tata to, on the occasion, speak a few words. Okay, but I think he was not in a position to be at the function in Jamshedpur, so we wanted to record it. And we were in Bombay House in Bombay. We were on the 3rd floor, and Mr. Tata was on the 4th floor. I used to work for the managing director's office in Tata Steel in those days. And the managing director, so the date was fixed that when he would come and from 4th floor to 3rd floor, and we would have the crew and record his, let's say, views or his comments on the 100 years. How do we mark the 100 years? And unfortunately, that day our managing director, that time Mr. Muthuraman, had to leave for a very important outstation meeting, so he was not there. So he told me to kind of handle the situation. Mr. Ratan Tata is a very tall figure. So Mr. Tata, so I was worried as to how I'm going to handle it. What am I going to do? And what do I do? Do I go up to 4th floor, bring him down? Does he come? But then I was told that nothing doing. He will come on his own at the appointed time. He came into the conference room and the crew was there. And he said, so what do I have to speak? And before he could speak, the crew went rushing to him, said, can you please give us an autograph? So before I could answer, the whole topic just moved. And anyway, so he obliged. And after that, of course, I was a bit nervous, but then I told him what he had to speak. And he just, in 2 minutes, he spoke. And after that, or whatever, 5 minutes or whatever, after that, as he was leaving, so I was prompted by somebody that, look, he's going, you should accompany him and see him off. So I started, and he's a tall man, walking with long steps, and started following him. After a while, he looked back to see who's this guy who's following me, because there were very few people in those days, at least on our floor. So he said, yes. And I said, sir, I just came to kind of see you off, at least till the end of 3rd floor. It's not a big office, huh? And he was saying, no, thank you very much. I have been in this office. I will find my way. There's nothing to find, actually. So very simple, very humble man. So that was one of the experiences I had. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So the next question was by Pratik Roy. Sir, what's the secret for climbing up the corporate ladder in Tata Metaliks?
I thought I just told you. Hunger for learning. Yeah. Right. So I said 3 things. Keep it simple, stupid. Right. The first one. Be ambitious. Okay. And have a hunger for learning. Right. 3 things I told you, isn't it?
So the next question is an anonymous question from the team. What would be your advice to students of schools and colleges who think to take on a career in the business sector, not as starting as an organization, but joining one and trying to lead that organization?
Sorry. So I think just, going back to, Vedant's question, as I said, hunger for learning, of course, is very important. So you must be a lifelong student. The other thing is to network and collaborate. So you must build your networks, because they help you in in situations where you don't realize. So and networking means to do something for somebody without expecting anything in return. Okay, so you must reach out to people, and just like you reached out to me. Okay, otherwise we would have never met, perhaps. It's good to network, even though it may not give you immediate dividends. So this 1-hour session may not give you any dividends. At least that's what I'm anticipating. But your networking is going to certainly help you today or tomorrow with people around. So network, collaborate, and be very, very focused on learning. Other things will follow. Now I can't tell you which line you should go to and all, because that becomes very general. But I think just these couple of things: that network well, and have a hunger for learning. So keep learning all your life. Right. Sorry. So next question, what were you saying? Can you repeat that?
Yes, sir. So this was an anonymous question from the team.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to students of schools and colleges who think to take on the career in the business sector?
So business sector means what?
So
Are you
as
meaning
in
entrepreneurs?
joining organizations and having a view to lead that organization.
So joining organizations and then to lead. So when you join an organization, ultimately your objective would be either to gain experience and then form your own organization, become an entrepreneur, or let's say to head that organization. I would say imagine that these could be perhaps 2 ambitions, isn't it? So So I really didn't understand the question. So what exactly is he trying to say? That what is required, or what is it?
So
Can you
from
just
your
read the
point of
question?
view,
Can you just read the question once again? Yeah.
yes, sir, sure. So, what will be your advice to students of schools and colleges who think to take on a career in the business sector with a view of joining an organization and then trying to lead the organization?
Okay. And then lead the organization.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so as I was saying a little while back, that the organization that you choose to join, you must be careful as to which organization you join. Joining a large organization has its pluses and minuses. Okay. As I said, large organizations tend to be bureaucratic. Okay. Tend to be. Depends. It's not necessarily true, but largely true in my opinion. So you can get bogged down because you may be in silos. So you must not go only for brand or only for money, but choose an organization where you have learning opportunities and growth opportunities. These two are important in my view: learning opportunities and growth opportunities. Subsequently, over a period of time, you can decide whether you want to continue in that organization or change ship, or even to start your own, let's say, organization. That's subsequently depends on a lot of factors. But for you, choose an organization which offers you scope for learning and growth. Yeah,
Thank you,
makes
sir.
some sense. Yeah, okay.
So the next question was by Uddhav Beliwala. So as most of the companies are opting for capital intensive technology for their production, which may lead to unemployment in future. So sir, so how can every individual today help to shape out that what will be the future without work?
Yeah. So this future of work with automation and robotics is a challenge. However, uh, there are lots of studies which say that the loss of jobs will vary greatly. As of now, the expectation is anywhere up to 30%. In advanced economies, up to 30% job losses can happen. While the estimate for India, which I was reading somewhere, is very low, maybe 5%, 7%. Because what's going to happen? Let's take the example of Tata Metaliks. So we have, let's say, employed 3 robots today. 2 more will go. Now, while it may replace some people who are doing their jobs, but we are creating new jobs, which is how do you manage that robo? How do you maintain that robo? Integrate. So there is data integration, software upgradation. You need to change. So all of that, new jobs will get created. So the job losses that one foresees may not happen to the extent that people often worry about, at least in countries with cheaper labor cost, because one of the drivers is also the cost of labor, which in India is much lower than most of the advanced economies, mature economies like Japan or Europe or US. Okay.
Thank you, sir. So, the next question is from Vedant. How can we maximize the potential of emerging technologies in our personal life and in our businesses in such a way that it will help us educate ourselves about how to implement technologies wisely in our businesses?
Okay. So it's a difficult question. Well, I think what you do in personal life. For example, I often struggle and I have to take help of, let's say, Shweta, who's there. Okay, she's also my reverse mentor. So we have what is the concept of reverse mentoring, where the youngsters mentor people like us, oldies like us, and teach them what is digital technology. So she takes my class every 2 weeks. She missed the class yesterday for some reason. The student was happy, I was happy. So one way is to keep yourself abreast of what's happening, because that then puts you in a position to, from your personal life to, let's say, migrate to the business is becomes easier, because you understand and appreciate the implications of technology much better. So it's good to be on the ball in both the areas, on the personal front as well as in the, let's say, in the organizational front. I think it generally, if you don't have an understanding, if you're not using it, if you're not appreciating it, it's unlikely that you will appreciate on the organizational front. So you need to be on top of it. So whatever is happening, you better be on top of it. Like I'll tell you, one of them is social media. Social media has its own pluses and minuses. On LinkedIn, let's say I'm there. On Facebook, I'm not so active, hardly. So on LinkedIn, one of the teachers, one of the, let's say, speakers, in 2017, I had gone to institute called CEDAP in Paris. So we had about a month of 15 days, 2 sessions. And so they have some very good speakers from around the world. And this lady from Belgium had come on social media. She was an expert. And she kept saying that, whoever asks you on LinkedIn to become your, connection, you should do it. Okay. And she told us a lot of things. Now, when I started following that, I found I had 1,000 connections and most of them were looking for jobs, which I did not have. Right. So you will need to be, temper this and also understand what is required, where value is there, where it's not there. But at least, you understand if you're using technology. And of course, being on LinkedIn or Facebook is hardly, usage of technology. I think that's, but there are many more things like sensors. I use, sensors at home in a limited way. As I said, air purifier. In my office, I have a Philips Hue lamp, use it with my mobile. I experimented. I went to Bangalore 5-6 years back, visited Philips office. They showed me, I got excited. Let's use it. So I'm saying these technologies and your personal life do tend to translate into business because you tend to get excited, then you want to explore these. Yep.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Arpan had this question. So, what is the best way to motivate ourselves in the financial aspect?
Best way to motivate
Ourselves in the financial aspect.
What financial aspect? I didn't get it. In what
Sir,
sense?
he wrote the question that what is the best way to motivate ourselves in the financial aspect?
Acha. So I don't understand the question. Financial aspect in what sense? So are you saying personal finance? Or I don't know, are you talking about banking and financial services or what is it?
So I think we can move ahead with the topic of
Yeah.
like personal finance.
Okay,
So
personal finance.
I
So
think we can move ahead with
I'm
that
not a
front.
financial expert, but personal, managing your personal finances is extremely important because as I was mentioning to you that you're privileged, you have your family has been able to sponsor your education. Tomorrow you want to do the same thing with your children, for yourself, etc., etc. Like I studied, and after my engineering, I worked with Tata Steel, and then I sponsored my education for my post graduation in IFT Delhi. So I could do it. I mean, even my father could have sponsored it, but I did it myself. So it gives you a sense of satisfaction and joy that you can manage it yourself. It gives you confidence, most importantly. So personal finances, I would tend to rate as equally important, but not to get carried away. You are still very young, and I think your families are going to take care of you. But yes, it should be kept in mind as you go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I think we are done with all our questions. So, Uddhav, you can have the floor. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, sir. Now I'd like to request my colleague Urvashi to please give the vote of thanks.
Good evening, sir. A warm and cherished evening to our most valued honorable chief guest, Mr. Sandeep Kumar, Managing Director at Tata Metaliks. It is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the priceless contribution of our guest of honor and the entire team of Business Casa for contributing towards making today's conclave happen. A few takeaway points which we can take from here, which I thought could be helpful, were having resources are not equal to resourcefulness. Don't join organization for salary, understand the opportunity and working of the organization. Digital world is and is going to be playing a crucial role, so learning about the digital world is necessary. Three important things to keep in mind are be ambitious, concerned for nature and society, be a lifelong student, and have hunger for learning. Then building networks and collaborating can take you a long way through life. 3 points to look while joining an organization. The purpose of organization, why is the organization being built? The priority and goals of the organization and the culture of the organization. I guess that will be all. On behalf of the team of Business Casa, I express my heartfelt gratitude to our honorable chief guest. Thank you, sir, for making time for us out of your busiest schedule and enlightening us with your valuable thoughts and suggestions. Thank you once again for adorning the conclave with your wonderful presence and sharing your invaluable experiences.
Thank you. Thank you, Urvashi. Thank you, Vedant, Rishabh, and Uddhav. Thank you very much for having me here. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope it was of some use to you guys. Thank you and all the best.
Does the audience, anybody have any other question, any counter questions?
I think the great thing is you have finished in time. I greatly appreciate you guys, sticking to the time and actually managing. So you guys have a sense of discipline, which is important. And as I said, just go for learning. That's all. I think if you focus on learning, you will go a long way. So great. Good luck. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
The participants can also leave.
Business Casa members, please stay back.
And the YouTube live stream can also stop.
Arushi,
Arushi?
just